Two coffee shops sit across the street from each other. Same size, same rent, same foot traffic walking past the window every morning. One of them will be gone within 3 years. The other will still be pulling in steady money 2 decades from now, long after everyone's forgotten which one used to be the better coffee. From the sidewalk, you cannot tell which is which. The difference isn't the coffee, the location, or even the owner's work ethic. It's something almost invisible that decides the outcome before either shop ever opens. And once you understand it, you'll start noticing it in every business you walk past for the rest of your life. I'm John, and if you enjoy practical finance documentaries, business ideas, and wealth-building strategies explained in a way that's actually useful, subscribe to the channel. Every week I break down money, investing, business, and financial freedom with practical lessons you can actually use. Today we're ranking 15 real businesses, but not by how much money they can eventually make. We're ranking them by something most business content ignores completely: how long it actually takes a total beginner to see their first dollar. We'll start with the businesses that make you wait the longest, and work down to the ones that can start paying you almost immediately. Pay attention to the gap between those two ends, because it explains more about who gets rich and who gives up than almost anything else on this list. At 15, the slowest of them all: buying into a service franchise. It sounds like the fastest way into business ownership. Hand over a check, get a proven system. In practice, it's often the slowest entry on this entire list. Between approval, training, site selection, and build-out, a new franchisee can spend the better part of a year paying fees before a single customer walks through the door. The upside is real: a tested playbook and a much lower failure rate than starting from scratch. The mistake beginners make is assuming the brand does the selling for them. It doesn't. Local marketing still falls on the owner, and the operators who thrive treat the franchise as a foundation, not a finish line. 14. Building a self-storage facility from the ground up. There's a reason so few people attempt this compared to how many open a restaurant. Permitting, construction, and the slow crawl toward a fully rented facility can take years before the property finally turns a real profit. What almost nobody explains is the hidden opportunity buried in that slowness. Once a facility is full, it stays remarkably full, because moving your belongings out is far more effort than just paying the bill another month. Patience here isn't a weakness. It's the entire business model. 13, and this one surprises people: buying an existing business. You'd assume that paying for something already running means instant cash flow, and eventually it does. But Mason learned the hard way that the paperwork alone, financing approval, lease transfer, supplier handoffs, took him 8 months before he ever touched a customer. The lesson isn't to avoid this path. It's to budget for the invisible runway most buyers don't plan for, because the business itself was never the slow part. The process of acquiring it was. 12. Opening a coin laundromat. Ever wonder why new laundromats are so much rarer than new coffee shops, even though both serve constant daily demand? Machines, plumbing, electrical capacity, and permits take real time to line up before the first quarter ever drops. But once it's running, a laundromat becomes almost self-managing, and the vast majority of them are still open years later, long after flashier concepts have folded. Slow to start, remarkably hard to kill once it's alive. 11. Custom small parts manufacturing. You'd think higher demand always wins the race to profitability. Custom manufacturing proves otherwise. Before the first paying order, an operator has to source suppliers, test tolerances, and often turn away work that doesn't fit their equipment. The payoff for that slow setup is a kind of quiet dominance. Once a client's parts are calibrated to your shop, switching suppliers becomes expensive and risky for them, so once you're in, you tend to stay in for years. 10. Commercial parking lot leasing. Here's a fact that surprises most people. An empty lot with painted lines and a gate can take longer to become profitable than you'd expect. Not because demand is weak, but because negotiating lease terms with the property owner and securing permits eats months before a single car ever pays to park. Once that's settled, though, the business runs itself. No inventory, no staff, almost no daily attention required. 9. Electrical work specialized in EV chargers and smart home systems. Levi was already a licensed electrician taking every job that came in, and it took him nearly a year of deliberately turning down unrelated work to become known as the installer people called specifically for EV chargers. That's the hidden cost most beginners underestimate. Specializing feels like it should be instant, but reputation takes time to build even when the skill is already there. Once it builds, though, the rates climb and the price shopping stops. 8. Plumbing focused on commercial kitchens. Ask yourself why a general plumber and a kitchen specialist plumber can charge wildly different rates for what looks like the same trade. The difference is trust built over time with a narrow group of clients who can't afford downtime. It takes months of reliable emergency calls before a restaurant owner starts calling you first instead of whoever's cheapest. Once that trust exists, though, it rarely gets tested again. 7. Pest control. In most states, you can't legally take your first paying job until you've passed a licensing exam, which puts a hard floor under how fast this one can start. But that same requirement is exactly why demand never dries up. It solves a problem that isn't optional to fix, and once a contract exists, it renews itself automatically, because no restaurant or building manager wants to risk a failed inspection to save a little money. 6. Residential and commercial cleaning. Harper printed 50 flyers and dropped them at houses 2 streets from her own. Her first paying client came within 11 days. That's faster than almost anything above it on this list. And the mistake most beginners make isn't finding that first client. It's failing to ask for a standing weekly arrangement instead of a one-time job. Recurring clients are what turn a side gig into a real business. 5. Renting out tools and equipment. Buy a piece of equipment a contractor doesn't want to own outright, list it, and your first renter can show up within days. The hidden risk almost nobody mentions is maintenance cost creeping up quietly with each rental, so the operators who do this well price a repair fund into every rental instead of treating profit as whatever's left over at the end of the month. 4. Bookkeeping for small businesses. Natalie sent 11 messages to business owners in a local networking group and had her first paying client within a week, working entirely from a laptop at her kitchen table. What keeps clients staying for years instead of months isn't lower pricing, it's reliability. A bookkeeper who never misses a deadline becomes nearly impossible to replace because the alternative is going back to dreading the task themselves. 3. Pressure washing. All it costs is a machine and a bit of nerve to knock on doors, and a first job can happen within a week of buying the equipment. The businesses that stall out here almost always made the same error. They kept chasing single driveways instead of asking property managers for standing seasonal contracts, which is where the real income lives. 2. ATM placement. Once a business owner agrees to host a machine, and most say yes within the first conversation, because it costs them nothing and keeps customers from leaving to find cash elsewhere. Income can start within days of installation. The entire operation runs on keeping the machine stocked, which means it scales by adding locations, not by adding hours. And number 1, the fastest of all, vending machines. Find a location with steady foot traffic, get permission, and a modern card reading machine can be earning money within 48 hours. Isaac placed his first machine in a gym 2 blocks from his apartment and had his first sale before the following weekend. What makes this the fastest entry on the entire list isn't luck, it's that the customer acquisition step barely exists. The people walking past the machine were already there for another reason entirely. So here's what that coffee shop mystery from the beginning was really about. The businesses that survive aren't necessarily the ones that started fastest or slowest. They're the ones built by owners who understood, going in, exactly how long the runway would be, and planned for it instead of being surprised by it. Speed and survival are 2 completely different games, and confusing them is where most beginners get hurt. Certainty is the actual product in almost every business on this list. Customers aren't paying for the service itself. They're paying to never have to think about the problem again.